What's going on, guys, and welcome to my driver tier list for the 2023 Spanish Grand Prix. So, let's get straight into it. If you've seen these before, I rank the drivers based on how they did in the Spanish Grand Prix, from S tier all the way down to F tier being the worst. So we will start with Alexander Albon. I'll be looking at my phone to the left to see where these drivers finished. Alex Albon finished in P16, and I believe he qualified P17 or 18. It wasn't a great weekend for Williams altogether. They just didn't really seem to have the pace. Yeah, I don't want to give him... I think I've just got to give him a C because, you know, he's not put out a worldy drive like he does sometimes where he's, you know, really getting the maximum out of that Williams. I don't think he did this weekend. The Williams just didn't look to be good here. They did say that it's a more traditional sort of track, and that's where they seem to struggle at those more normal sort of tracks. And yeah, it just didn't really work out for Williams or Albon. So yeah, I think a C straight down the middle is about where I got to put him. Now, Fernando Alonso, he ended up finishing 7th, qualified 8th, technically 9th before Gasly's penalty. He did not have a good weekend, his home Grand Prix, and after, I don't think I've put him lower than A tier this whole season so far, but it wasn't a great weekend for Alonso. He got damage in Q1, floor damage after going wide in qualifying, and then kind of never really brought it back from there onwards. It looked like he did have more pace than Stroll in the end, but ultimately, you know, at least he said that, oh, I'll just let, you know, it doesn't matter which way around where we finish, I'll let Stroll finish ahead of me. But yeah, I don't think I can put it to a C because he was good. I mean, he was still good, but that one mistake in qualifying really screwed him over. So I think it's a B for Alonso. Yeah, he ultimately, it was his fault that he had that damage. But yeah, Aston Martin didn't look like the second quickest team this weekend anyway. Mercedes did seem to be on top of them this weekend. So yeah, I think a B from Alonso has got to be about as good as I can give him. Valtteri Bottas, it was another terrible weekend for Bottas. P19, way behind everyone else, way behind his teammate this weekend. Once again, he said that he's like, oh, we've got issues with the car, and there must be some sort of issue with his car because he is not this far off the pace. He just isn't. A guy that could beat Lewis Hamilton on his day is not this far down the order and behind his teammate, who isn't exactly the most prestigious teammate. So there must be an issue with that car, but still, it is still a terrible weekend for Bottas, and I'm going to put him in E again. He's been in E a lot this season. I'm kind of reserving F for like really terrible, or like, you know, crashes and, you know, bumps and just braking shit, and, you know, Bottas is just slow. So I think E is fair enough. Nick de Vries finished in P14. Yeah, I mean, he beat Yuki in qualifying. Yuki then had a really great race. Got that penalty, which, yes, by the letter of the law of the rules now, I guess it was justified, but I think a lot of other drivers have done the same thing. Max this season, I mean, literally at the start of the race, I think he kind of did a similar thing to Sainz. So yeah, I think it wasn't great for Yuki. I don't think it was particularly fair in a lot of ways. But yeah, he had a great start. De Vries didn't. Just kind of fell back, and it was a very nothing race for De Vries, but I mean, it wasn't terrible. I think it's just a C for him. It was just an AlphaTauri bleh weekend. But yeah, although he got on top of his teammate for qualifying, in the race he was a considerable way behind, and even with the 5-second penalty, still finished behind Tsunoda. Pierre Gasly had a great initial qualifying of P4. Amazing qualifying from Gasly. He impeded 2 drivers, though, while in qualifying. Verstappen and... who else was it? Sainz? Was it? I think it was Verstappen and Sainz. And yeah, ended up starting P10 and ended up only finishing P10 in the end as well. So I think just because of that, it's got to be a C. I mean, if he didn't get those penalties in qualifying, who knows where he could have been here. But ultimately, He got those penalties, started 10th, had a terrible start, fell down to like 14th, I think, at the start, and then eventually made his way back up to 10th again. Just a reminder, nobody at all retired from this race, so all 20 drivers finished, so that also makes it a bit more difficult for the lower down cast to, work their way up, or just people in general to work their way up the order. So yeah, I think it's just a C from Gasly. A great qualifying, but the issues with, impeding, which I guess can also partly be put on the team not telling him of those drivers coming through, and then in the race just wasn't able to make the positions he perhaps should have. Then we have, who do we have next? I don't know, I'm looking at my phone, I should be looking at the computer. Lewis Hamilton. Great drive from Hamilton this weekend. P2 was the better of the two Mercedes drivers for sure. George still had a good race, not a good qualifying, but a good race. But Hamilton was just on it all weekend. I don't really think there was much more Hamilton could have done, to be honest. Yeah, I think, I think I'm going to put Hamilton in S, because I really don't think there's much more he could have done. He finished 24 seconds behind Max, but Max was on another level this weekend. And yeah, Hamilton just P4, I think it was P4 in qualifying. A little bit disappointed that he didn't get P2, I think, or at least ahead of Norris. I think, showing the pace he had in Q1 and Q2, it was looking like he was going to be on the front row of the grid with Max, but ultimately it was P4, but he made it P2 in the race. He had a great race, and yeah, just a great one from Lewis. Nico Hülkenberg. Now, he started, I think, P7, got into Q3, great qualifying from Hülkenberg, and then finished P15. So I don't know what happened to Hülkenberg. I think the Haas just didn't have the pace this weekend. So I think I'm going to put him in C. Yes, he's dropped a long way down the order, but without retirements and on a track that now with the, getting rid of that chicane, looks like a relatively easy track to overtake on, at least into turn 1. The Haas just didn't have the race pace, so the race pace, not the race place. So yeah, I think a C from Hülkenberg's got to do it. Charles Leclerc. Wow, what the worst weekend? I reckon possibly the worst weekend where he's actually finished a race, at least, that Leclerc has had. His pace was nowhere. Now, this is one, I said with Bottas, there must be a car issue. With this one, there definitely has to have been a car issue with Leclerc. He is not that far off. I mean, he is a qualifying king, and he got knocked out in Q1 in a Ferrari. I mean, and his teammate was on the front row. So yeah, I don't, there was obviously something wrong with his car. Ferrari couldn't find anything wrong with it. They changed the whole back end and he still didn't have the pace in the race. There must be something else going on there. That's just, he was way too far off for that to be the case. He then kind of got screwed over by strategy in the race with a good old Ferrari. He started on the hards and we were thinking, oh yeah, he's probably going to go really long into this race and maybe stick a couple of sets of softs on at the end or something, or a medium and a soft. But he was actually one of the first guys to pit off the hard tyres. He pitted before the Mercedes pit off the softs, before a few people pitted off the softs, and I don't know what what Ferrari were thinking there. So ultimately, it's a terrible weekend from Leclerc, no doubt about it. Yes, maybe it's car problems, but it's not a good look for him. So I think because of that, just because of how far off he is, and because, yeah, I think it's got to be an E. I'm sorry, but I think it is. Oh, is that harsh? Isn't E harsh? Maybe an E is a bit harsh. Maybe D, because there has to be a car problem there. I mean, it's been a few races now for Bottas, so, that's making me a bit more skeptical. But after being pretty quick in Monaco last weekend, yes, he didn't have a great weekend for other reasons, but he was decently quick in Monaco. For him to be this far off in Spain, there must be an issue somewhere. So, yeah, I think a D is reasonable. If this continues on, though, he's definitely going to fall down to the E, and maybe even the F category. If he gets knocked out in Q1 again, then, yeah, don't know what I'm going to say about that. Kevin Magnussen, a bit of a weekend to forget for him. P18, he didn't get through Q1 either when Hülkenberg was in Q3. So I think it's a D for Magnussen. I mean, the Haas had no pace in the race, but he also didn't have the pace of his teammate in qualifying. So, yeah, it's got to be a D for him. Lando Norris, what could have been for him, ended up P3 on the grid after qualifying, and then broke his front wing into turn 1 on Lewis Hamilton ahead. Yeah, Hamilton gave him a little bit of a squeeze, but Norris wasn't far enough alongside to kind of be allowed room or be justified room, and he tried sticking his nose in and it just got his wing taken off. So that is kind of on Lando. The qualifying performance was great though, and yeah, it's really unfortunate that that happened. I think I'm just going to go down the middle with a C. Really unfortunate. And yeah, although the incident was his fault, I mean, it was very minimal. So I think a C is fine, you know, considering how good his qualifying performance is. That definitely puts it up there a bit. But yep. Esteban Ocon finished in P8 ahead of his teammate, qualified behind, but then Gasly, of course, got the penalty. It was a decent weekend for Ocon. Nothing crazy compared to his last weekend. So is it also a C? I think because he was a decent way behind Gasly in qualifying for the penalty and ultimately only finished about 4 seconds ahead of him in the race. So yeah, I think it's a C again from Ocon after the blistering pace of Monaco. It wasn't quite there this weekend. And on the, you know, although he beat his teammate in the race in the end, I think Gasly was the quicker driver by a considerable margin this weekend. So yeah, it's just a C for Ocon. Now Sergio Perez finished P4. Qualified P11, didn't make it into Q3 in what was by far the quickest car this weekend, the Red Bull. Yes, he made his way to P4, but he's not on the podium. And when Max is that far ahead, he didn't make his way through the order anywhere near as quick as I thought he would. So I can't, because he has made his way from 11th to 4th, I can't give him anything worse than an average grade. But it is an average grade for me because he's just, the qualifying is so important, and he didn't even get through to Q3. Like, how in that car that was way quicker than everyone else did he not get in? And yeah, I mean, I expected him to be on at least on the podium, and in the end he was about 3 seconds, just over 3 seconds behind Russell. So yeah, I think a C. Maybe I'm being harsh, but hey, he's in by far the quickest car on the grid. He should not be making those mistakes. Oscar Piastri qualified P10, got into Q3, both McLarens in Q3, fell back in the race to P13. But yeah, I think once again, the McLarens didn't have the race pace, and he had a decent qualifying. Could have been a little bit higher up, I think, in Q3, but I'm going to give him a B because yes, I know Norris got the better of him in qualifying by a considerable margin, but Oscar kept, no, maybe a B's too. No, you know what, I'm going to put him in C because, yeah, Lando did completely destroy him in qualifying. So, yeah, I think putting him in B is a bit too generous. I think C. C for Oscar. He finished ahead of Lando because of Lando's issue, but yeah, I think all round it was an all right weekend from Oscar. George Russell had a terrible qualifying as well, P12. Once again, also knocked out in Q2. A lot of big names knocked out in Q1 and Q2 this weekend. But then fought his way back through to P3. And, I mean, he did a great job at the start. He had a great start, got past about 4 or 5 cars. Yes, he took the escape road, but he didn't overtake anyone by doing that. And it was deemed legal, so he didn't get a penalty. So, yeah, looked really good in the race. I'm going to put George Russell in A. Mercedes have stepped up this weekend, and hopefully we'll see some better pace from them in the future as well. And yeah, George did a very good job. His teammate definitely got the better of him this weekend, but it's a good result from him. Carlos Sainz ended up finishing P5, put it P2 on the grid, was way better than Leclerc this weekend because obviously Leclerc's got some kind of issue, he has to, but definitely a good weekend from Sainz. I think P5 was about as much as he could have hoped for. The Mercedes were too quick, definitely Max was too quick. He had a little go at Max into turn 1, kind of got chopped off, and that's when he got overtaken by Hamilton, or at least, yeah, I think he got overtaken by Hamilton there, didn't he? Or at least got challenged by Hamilton through like turn 2, turn 3. And then, yeah, Perez, of course, got past. He's in a Red Bull as well. So I think, though, Sainz was good this week, and he was showing good pace. I'm going to put him in A. I think it was a very good result from Sainz. Logan Sargent, qualified 20th, finished 20th. Like I said, the Williams was not good this weekend, but Logan Sargent just is not performing. He just is not performing this weekend. And, yeah, I think because of that, it's going to be an E again. You know, it's just, he's not he's just always the last of the runners. And yes, the Williams is probably the worst car, but he's not close enough to his teammate, and he's just not doing enough, in my opinion, at the moment. I think he will get better, but at the moment he's not doing enough to really keep that seat, to be honest, for like next year. So I think an E for Logan Sargent. Lance Stroll actually had his best weekend, I think, so far. Finished P6 and beat his teammate. Yes, largely down to Alonso having damage, but still great stuff from Lance Stroll. Had a pretty good race. And yeah, do I want to put him in A as well? It was very good from Stroll. I think, you know what? I think I will, because Alonso had that damage. So, that was his fault, so he goes in B. Stroll goes in A. I reckon that's fair enough. Yuki Tsunoda, once again, was looking great for Yuki. Didn't have a good qualifying, got beaten by De Vries, both out in Q1, and then but then had a great race. He was running in the points. I think fairly unfairly was given that penalty. I can see why it was given, but at the same time, I think it was a bit harsh. So, yeah, I think I'm going to give Yuki a B. If he had not got that penalty and finished in the points, it would have been an A. But because of that penalty, I am going to put him in a B, because I can understand why he got it, but I do think it was a bit harsh. Max Verstappen, I mean, it's an S, easily. Dominated the whole weekend. I think the only session he didn't top was it Q1? I think it was one of the qualifying sessions he didn't top. Every other weekend, fastest in every session, every other session, sorry, fastest in FP1, FP2, FP3, qualifying, fastest lap, led every lap, absolutely dominant, probably his most dominant race so far. Crazy from Verstappen, S tier for sure. And then Zhou Guanyu, who finished P9, got that position from good old Yuki Tsunoda. It's close to an S for me because it was very good, but I am going to put him in A. I mean, he's dominated his teammate. He has done a really, really good job, and yeah, just a really good one from him, especially after, I mean, no, he qualified him, he got through to Q2, didn't he, and then got eliminated. So yeah, massively outperforming Bottas once again. So it's another good weekend for Zhou. So anyway, that's going to be it for this video, guys. Thank you very much for watching. If you enjoyed, please go ahead, like and subscribe, and I'll see you guys in the next video.